Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. TRYOUTS! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass. Our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
All right, welcome to this week's episode, this week's get-together, where we are elevating our coaching game. This podcast is specifically designed for youth baseball coaches, although pretty much all of this could be used at any level of baseball. That said, it's specifically designed for busy youth coaches, giving you an efficient, fast-paced resource to get you to being a great coach as fast as possible. Today, we got part one of our interview with Coach Adam SARANCIK. Coach SARANCIK is an author of multiple coaching books. He writes articles for some of the biggest coaching publications. I'll talk about his bio in just a second, and then we'll get into part one of that interview. In part one, Adam will share out what he thinks leagues and coaches and parents should do first. The first question they should ask to make sure everyone's in alignment and tryouts can be as successful as possible. In part one today, Coach SARANCIK will also discuss the benefits of actually coaching during tryouts rather than just facilitating tryouts and evaluating players. He's also going to share the two main things that he looks for when evaluating players at tryouts. Coach SARANCIK also discusses a form/questionnaire that he has players fill out as part of the tryout process so he can pick players that are a better fit for his team. And lastly, in today's episode, Coach SARANCIK is going to discuss a big mistake that leagues make when it comes to planning tryouts and how to avoid it. Quickly, before we hop into that, the coaching plan is available, 8020baseball.com. It has everything you need in one easy to access, simple to access spot to be a great coach. Everything you need to be a great coach from the start of the season to the end of the season. It has every drill you need to be a great coach, to run elite practices. And that's just about 25% of what is over there. We got the pitching coach manual. It's loaded and it has to easily be the best value of anything out there in terms of everything that you get for one very reasonable price, considering that just the other day I saw a coaching book for youth baseball hitters that was actually more expensive than the entire coaching program that took me years to build out. And the biggest benefit that I don't think can be found anywhere out there is that the 80-20 baseball coaching plan removes everything that you don't need to do and only has the stuff that you need to do to be a great coach. For example, there's only one ground ball drill. Now, it's advanced, it has 9 sequences to it, but that's it. You just need one. You're going to be running it like clockwork. And it covers everything that you need to cover with ground balls at all levels for that matter, not just youth baseball. But it is designed, and the whole coaching plan is specifically designed with youth baseball coaches in mind. All of you smart coaches who are very busy with your day jobs, your families, but you want to be great and you want the most direct path to that. The entire coaching plan is housed in one spot with quick access. It's hubbed through the 8020baseball.com website, so you don't have to download a bunch of stuff, have a bunch of files all over the place, and you can have access to it within minutes of purchasing it. And a little side note, I built out the whole purchase experience by hand, by myself. I didn't have a website designer do it because I wanted to make sure that it literally was the most efficient way to actually purchase the coaching program. You click purchase, type in a few things. It even has Apple Pay or Google Pay, and boom, you'll get an email sent to you with your login information, and there you are. There's about 30 videos. Most of them have me on my 75-inch touchscreen showing you exactly how to run everything to a T and be a great coach. So 8020baseball.com. I've had quite a few coaches buy it in the past month. I know baseball season's revving up. Also, once you buy it, I'll send you an email, not an automated email. I'll actually send you one. I send it to all the coaches that has my top startup tips to get the most out of it as fast as possible. Head over and get that at 8020baseball.com. I promise you will not be disappointed. Now let's dive into part one of our interview with Coach SARANCIK. He's the owner of Elevate Sports Academy, mentoring student athletes in sports skills, athleticism training, nutrition, recovery, college and career counseling. He has spent 45 years mentoring youth-aged baseball players. Adam's teams have consistently won championships at every youth league and high school level. He has served as a league founder, board member, coaches and players clinic director many times in his coaching career. He has 4 Amazon top 100 best-selling coaching coaching books. These books are awesome. Highly recommend getting those. You can find those on Amazon. Adam's also a frequent contributor to many of the leading national coaching journals, such as the ABCA's Inside Pitch. I always smile when I open the page and there's Adam's face and his article. When I get my monthly Inside Pitch, he's written articles for coachinginsider.com and Collegiate Baseball newspaper. He earned his bachelor's degree from San Diego State University, the Aztecs, and a master's degree in teaching from Western Oregon, and his Juris Doctor degree from the University of San Diego School of Law. He lives in Portland with his wife of 50 years, Karen. With that said, in the podcast, the audio, Coach SARANCIK's audio, is pretty good, though it gets a little spotty at times. But that's the nature of a lot of these podcasts, these remote podcasts, things like that. But it should have no effect on all the information we're going to get out of this interview, this discussion. All right, let's dive into part one of our interview. All right, I am here with Coach Adam SARANCIK. Coach SARANCIK, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Coach. Thanks for having me. Good to be here. And happy 10th anniversary. This is podcast number 10 for us.
That is awesome. I always get a smile when I see you pop on, and I know we're going to have a great conversation. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And with that said, why don't you kind of set the table with this topic that I think and you think, and we are 100% agreement is so important to talk about, especially this time of year.
Yeah, we are in January. And, from all my years of experience, it's interesting. As a former litigation attorney, what I realized and all litigation attorneys realized is if you don't select the right jurors, what you say and do during the trial may not matter. Your fate may have been decided long before the actual trial starts. And kind of the same thing with the selection of team members when it comes to tryouts for a sport. If you don't make the right selection as far as not just talent and tangible skills, but the intangibles, if everybody's not aligned with why we're there and what the purpose is, you may be in for a rough season. The team really isn't going to achieve its full potential. And yet, when I observe tryouts at all levels, at all ages, there's one thing that coaches tend to copy from other coaches and other leagues and their experience as a player. It's tryouts. It's kind of the same over and over and over again. I mean, there are some things that are improving and are developing. It's not exactly the same, but it's a lot of line standing. It's a lot of fly balls, ground balls, hitting stations and things like that. They tend to copy what everybody else is doing. There's not a whole lot of thought and planning and creativity. And then they kind of wonder, why didn't it go as well as we thought it was going to go? After the season's done, looking back on the team. And unfortunately, maybe they evaluated success based on wins and losses in a championship. And yet the players didn't really get any better from a throwing, hitting, and fielding a baseball point of view. They just won a lot of games against mediocre competition. And unfortunately, there's a lot of leagues that's how they measure success. If they travel to tournaments and they win games, a particular team, when they play within the league, or like how we do it in Oregon, we go and play the same level teams across the county. At the end of the year, if the record is good, they think they had a successful year. And yet, really, is that long term what was best for the players? And did they really get out of it what they should have gotten out of it? Both from their perspective and just generally objectively from a baseball point of view. So, yeah, right now I thought is a good time to you and I kind of share our experience and say, can we do it better? I mean, I just appreciate the content you bring week in and week out to your podcast. And I think that's a theme over and over again. You're really into practical information that people can implement right now. And how can we do it better? Whatever we're doing, whether it's throwing and receiving progression or just the mental approach or whatever, we're always trying to get better as coaches and as players. That's kind of the approach I'd like to take with tryouts.
Getting better is something you and I most definitely share in terms of the desire to get better. And I was listening to a podcast the other day. It wasn't a baseball podcast. And I love how you tied in when you were a litigation lawyer and how you tied in juror selection with team selection. I like that. It's very analogous. And I heard this story that's similar in that it carries over. If say you're a founder of a business or an owner of a business, to give the people, your employees, ownership of their roles. Everybody's like probably heard that. But if you go, well, why? Why is that important? Is that because they don't like being told what to do? Did they have some issues with coaches before or parents and they had very dictator-like upbringing? But I think a large part of that is that it gives the employee, and in our case, us as coaches, the desire to improve. Because instead of like, hey, I did this, what's next to their boss, they can look for answers, solutions, and it's continual improvement that gives them a lot of satisfaction, rather than checking a bunch of boxes that their manager told them. I think there's that part that doesn't get talked about. Now, how's that related to us? As coaches, you and I really want to get better. And it's fun. You smile when you come up with these new ideas, these things. You question the game, not to be a contrarian, but you and I question it because you know what? It makes practice more fun. It makes games more fun, keeps us from getting stagnant. I think that's something I wanted to touch on because I remember you bringing this up last time, and I think gets overlooked the benefit of wanting to learn and question and always looking to iterate and improve. Maybe little small adjustments sometimes. A lot of times it's just small adjustments and not changing just for change's sake, but it makes it more fun as a coach. It really helps us avoid getting burned out and loving to go. I tweeted the other day something about that. Hey, you want to look forward to practice every day? Go with the mindset of what am I going to get better today? What connection can I make with a kid to elevate their game in their life? But what are the top priorities coaches should follow when they're evaluating players at tryouts?
Yeah. Coaches tend to do what they've done before. Okay. If you want to do better, you have to do different, right? Yet every year this kind of works and we had a good record last year, so let's kind of do the same thing. And yet times change and players are changing. We have to realize that players are not sticking with baseball and are not as committed to baseball as they once were. It used to be the American pastime. I'm not sure it is anymore. By the time they get to middle school, if they haven't been engaged and felt like this is a fun experience, something that they're really getting a lot out of, they're moving on to other sports. They're moving on to lacrosse and things like that. So when you talk about priorities, you got to take a step back. And in my opinion, you have to sit down as coaches and as a league first and start with why. Okay. Why does this league exist? Why does this division within the league exist? And why does this team exist? What do you coaches want? And then as a group, I think you need to align your goals. All right. And then even before tryouts, I think a lot of leagues make a mistake. They have the coach, parent, player meeting after tryouts. I think you should have one after tryouts, but I think you need to have one before tryouts so that you can hear what their expectations are. I mean, we all know there's got to be a line between the involvement that we want parents to have. We don't want to step on our toes. We want them in the stands, not within the lines sometimes if they don't have the right experience and they're not philosophically compatible with who we are. But at the same time, if you don't have parents on the same page with coaches, what your priorities during evaluations are might be completely different than theirs. Okay, so if they're expecting you to play a tournament every weekend, play a certain number of 50, 60 games in the spring and summer, and the purpose of this division within our league and this team is development. Okay, we want to practice twice as much as we play. We're going to make sure that these guys at the end of the year are going to get better throwing, receiving, fielding, and hitting, or vice versa. You may have parents that say, we just don't have the time and or the financial ability to travel as you want to all these tournaments or whatever. Okay. So I think it's really important that fundamentally two things are done. Number one, why do we exist? Okay, what's the purpose? Developmental, elite team playing against elite team. What's the purpose of our league, this division, and this team? And then aligning the goals with what the league wants, coaches want, and what the parents want to make sure that when you all get together on this team and you're moving forward, you're all moving in lockstep. Because if you're not only may you have a bad experience for that season and that team, the viability of your league may be in jeopardy, your reputation. And that's why so many families are going to club ball. We're not getting anything out of this. My son's not being challenged. My son's not being developed. Okay. He's going into high school thinking he's really good because he had 600, and yet he's going to struggle in high school because he's really not that good. He just did well against a bunch of mediocre competition. All right. So you got to get everybody on the same page, if that makes sense. I'll stop there and get your comments on kind of that philosophy.
Clarity as to the purpose. I help out it's a branch of the Little League, a competitive branch, and I'm the VP of coaching development. So basically the coaching development director. When I'm in these meetings with them, I often go back to the question, are we just copying what this other travel outfit or this other group is doing or this other league? But is that the best way? We shouldn't be asking who's doing what. We should say, I came across this outfit out there in Nampa. I saw them running this, or hey, I heard they host their tryouts like this. Well, that sounds better than anything I've heard before. Let's maybe think of incorporating it.
Let me just give you a couple of examples of where I think mistakes are being made and how specifically coaches can do better. Like you said, let's just take it from a league-wide point of view. Coach, from all the podcasts we've done before, I look at everything from a person, athlete, player point of view. I always start with the person. It doesn't matter if it's tryouts, practice, games. I always look at the people first. Who are these people that I'm trying to coach, mentor, or whatever? So when we're talking about tryouts, what do we want when it comes to players? Do we just want players who throw the hardest, hit the ball the furthest, run the fastest? Or are there other things that, especially nowadays, can also impact and maybe sometimes even more what the players get out of this and how much fun everybody's ultimately going to have. So what do we want with players? Number one, you want a player with a teachable spirit. Somebody who comes to practice every day wanting to get better. Well, at tryouts, what are we doing to assess that? You're hitting ground balls, you're hitting fly balls, you're doing this skill assessment. In what way is that assessing teachable spirit? I don't see coaching going on. I like to coach during a tryout, and I got somebody taking notes for me, right? I stand next to the person and say, this is what I saw, blah, blah, blah. But I want to coach. Number one, I want to try out the templates that I've done in the off season to see if they're going to work with this group. Okay. Number two, I want to find out who's teachable. There are players that have kind of been entitled to a certain status up till now, and they just assume either on their own or through mom or dad or through their private coach, right? That's a reality. This is what I'm going to do. You're not going to teach me about pitching. I've got a pitching coach. You're not going to teach me about hitting. I've got a hitting coach. I'm paying them big money, X number of times a week or month to coach me. I don't need that from you. Well, as a coach, you might want to know that, right? It's a reality in our world nowadays, private coaching. Or kids that think if I'm good, I don't need to be taught anything more, right? Secondly, you want kids with a growth mindset. You want kids that want to improve and understanding that failure is a necessary and important part of that improvement. Well, what are we doing at tryouts to determine growth mindset? Are we really challenging them at tryouts as a person, as an athlete, as a player, to see how do they handle failure? What are we doing to determine whether they have the ability? And a lot of this is not a determinative thing. Oh, if he doesn't handle mistakes well now, we don't want him. That's not what we're saying. This is all information. Okay. This is all information. You only have so many slots because of coaches, facilities, equipment, time, whatever. But this is all information you would like to have. If this is a basic, let's use Oregon's junior baseball as an example. We have a national level for beginning, just learning the basic level skills. And then we have the American level, they have your intermediate level skills, and then you have your federal level, guys that are at least developmentally ahead of their peers at this point in time. Okay. Well, let's say at the national American level, if the kid doesn't have a lot of growth mindset, he gets frustrated, whatever, but he's got a real teachable spirit, seems hungry to learn. That's a kid that really you want to coach, you want to teach him from a life skill point of view, how to handle adversity or whatever. On the other hand, at your elite levels, if they don't have a teachable spirit, and they don't handle adversity, especially if you have 12 guys in the team and you're deciding between 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, the guy that really doesn't handle adversity well or doesn't have the growth mindset, it's not very teachable. That kid may not be right for your team for that purpose. And then finally, what about availability? This is a huge issue nowadays, right? Everybody is pushing these kids to play multiple sports. Okay. That's another podcast at another time. Well, if that's what you're telling a kid, go and play multiple sports, guess what the reality is nowadays? It's not playing multiple sports in season. If you want to play on the best teams with the best players and have the best coaching, you've got to do it almost year round. You can't just play spring, summer soccer. You got to play fall soccer and winter soccer. You can't just play football in the fall. You've got to do 7v7 camps. You can't just play basketball in the winter. You've got to go to basketball camps and tournaments in the summertime to play with the best players and the best coaches. You've got to do it year round. Well, guess what? There's not enough days in the week to do that, right? And there's not enough energy to do that. You might want to find out ahead of time from the player, what other sports are you doing during my baseball season? All right. What other obligations have the parents committed you to athletically and otherwise? School, dentist appointments, vacations. Man, I was a high school coach at a very prominent high school in Portland one time, and our league season started right after spring break. And I said, boy, that's going to be a great time. It's a really tough academic school. That's going to be a great time to get a lot of work done during spring break. Well, guess what? All these players' parents are very wealthy. They were gone for the 2 weeks. They were in Hawaii, Europe, whatever. I didn't get a single day of practice done, right? So availability, is the best ability, is the old saying. You might want to know that before you choose a bunch of players, because these kids are saying, well, I'm sorry, coach, I'm really not available, on these Sundays because I've got football or I've got other sports, other obligations. You might want to know that before you pick your team if you're, say, picking an elite team. If you're picking a developmental team or more of a rec level, let's have fun, let's just be out here with our friends, and if that's the whole purpose, it may not matter. Again, this gets back to what's the purpose of your team? What's the purpose of the division within the league? All this plays into this selection and whether it's going to be a good experience and whether we're aligned on where we're going and what we're doing. So that makes sense.
Definitely. What I'm hearing you say is first, before we get to arm strength, before we get to their swing and how well they play defense and run the bases and their speed, let's make sure that, one, they're available and their availability, and two, they're coachable. So, coachability and availability. Without coachability, right? And without availability, all the other stuff after it doesn't matter.
Yeah, coach during the tryouts. Okay, what I see happen over and over again, you have coaches pick up a bat, start hitting ground balls and fly balls. Find other people to do those things so you can get out next to your players and show them how to field a ground ball and a fly ball. In youth sports, telling is not teaching. You've got to be able to demonstrate it. Starting from dynamic movement. The kids don't want to be told how to move. They want to be shown how to move. So do that in tryouts. Coach the kids and see how they respond to your coaching. You may, in your mind, be a great coach, but they're not responding to you very well because of your style or whatever. You need to know that going in when you're selecting. So number one, get out there, you and your staff. I like to have one coach for every 3 players on my teams. I have 12 players. I got 4 coaches. And these are coaches that are not only fundamentally sound and philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. So I want one coach for every 3 players, right? So I want my coaches out there coaching. Another thing a coach that we want is leaders, right? Well, what are we doing in tryouts to determine leadership? Some of this can be on a form that the player fills out as a part of the tryout process. What's your favorite sport? From one hand, if their favorite sport is baseball, I love it. Also, a positive is I want as many water polo players and football players as I can get because they're tough competitors, right? But I might ask them on that form, on your other teams, how often are you chosen captain? Right. And in tryouts, I'm going to ask for volunteers to lead dynamic movement, or after I demonstrate a drill, throwing, fielding, hitting, who would like to come up here and show everybody else how it's done? What players step forward? At the end of the tryout, we have a little game sim going on. Ask the players to choose team captain, see who they choose. I mean, all these little tips along the way might let you know, this guy doesn't have the best skill on the team, but boy, these players love him. They respect him. His favorite sport is baseball, and his teammates think that he's a great leader. Information you might want to know going in. So leadership is also another skill. So all these things from a personal point of view, I think teachability, teachable spirit, growth mindset, leadership, these are things I don't see being assessed during tryouts.
And for those coaches, and I know there's a good chunk of coaches that might not have access to the kids during tryouts, or maybe the coaches are expected to kind of hang off to the side and the league runs the tryout and then the coaches evaluate. For those coaches, what you could do, just be aware and prioritize. Put these at the top of your tryout clipboard, priorities. What you have at the top is what you're going to be reminded of to look for. And then you don't need to go up to each kid necessarily to see if they're coachable. You can do a lot of that from a distance. Like, for example, if you don't have access to coaching the kids during tryouts, if you do, great. I mean, what Coach SARANCIK's saying, get out there, coach them, and then see how they respond. One thing you could do if you don't have access to the kid is watch closely to how they respond to the commands from the league organizers. If they say, all right, that group's going over here, do they put their head down and sprint over there and hustle over there? There are very efficient ways to do what Coach SARANCIK is talking about here. They're outside of the box. It doesn't need to be an interaction with us that we use to assess. That's a great way to start. And if you just got a group of 10 kids out there, 12 or 15, that's fine. But if you don't get a chance to talk to all of them or even half of them because it's just not facilitated that way, take what Coach SARANCIK's saying here and leverage it and use it in different ways. Like, you can see how fast the kid responds to, do they lollygag? Do they mess around? Are they showboating? Are they listening? Are they doing their own thing? Or are they following the directions of whoever that coach is or director or league president, whoever's running the tryouts saying? So
respectfully, I wouldn't coach in a league like that where I didn't have the ability to get out on the field and coach. I don't understand why the league insists on taking control of tryouts. The coaches are the ones that are going to coach. Either they trust the coaches to be able to coach and to organize practices, or they don't. So I would never coach in a league where I couldn't be out there coaching and interacting, because I want to know how this kid's going to react to me and my staff. I don't care how they react to some league administrator who may not have any of the coaching skill that I have. Again, what's the purpose of this team? In Oregon and JBO, we tell the people, if you think your skill level, this is what's going to go along with the federal level team. This kind of coaching, this kind of travel schedule, this kind of competition. If you think you're at that level, tryouts, for that team and those teams are here. Okay. And then we see how many sign up. If we get more than 25 at that tryout, okay, we're going to have a second tryout, or we're going to have multiple tryouts. There are some kids that are just learning the game. They don't want to travel. Great. They have a different tryout. So I want as many qualified evaluators that can give me information as possible. It kind of helps, holistically, again, from a progression point of view, where we're going and why we're here. So I always invite the high school coach and their assistant coaches or their best players, et cetera, to come and be evaluators. They may not make decisions, but they've got a whole lot of experience and information that can help me both for that tryout and for the coming season. So let's get a lot of evaluators out there who are qualified and who can also run stations and keep things moving. Right? Let's get away from lines. If you've got a line, you've got a design problem in your tryout or in your practice plan, you want multiple stations, a high level of engagement, and you want things going boom, 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 right? But you can't do that if you don't have enough people involved that really good experience with what they do. All of this has to happen, this planning and stuff, way ahead of time. You can't just say, well, this is what we're doing. Tryouts are going to be on this Saturday or this Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to do it this way. No, like I say, you got to step back. You've got to have time where you're meeting with the league, the coaches, the parents, everybody get on the same page, and then design it to set yourself up for success where it's manageable and productive. Okay. And not just doing what we've always done. So I would never accept that as, well, I'm sorry, but you're going to go sit in the stands. We're going to hit the fly balls and the ground balls. But I understand it's where you live and you may not have a choice. But that's sad that people are defaulting to that same old way when it really, to me, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Totally. There's some of those archaic designs of tryouts where they have large groups. I've seen big numbers out at tryouts before. I've seen high school tryouts that have 100 kids at one time. There's not that many high school coaches at any program. I mean, they had 4 varsity, you had 2 JV and 2 freshmen. I mean, that's 8 coaches for 100 kids. Give me a range of what you found to be an effective amount or a good amount of kids at one time at a tryout. What would be like a range?
Yeah, absolutely. The range is however many need to be there for the number of evaluators you have. You have to decide if you have 10 evaluators, you can have 30 kids. If you got 3 evaluators, you may only be able to handle 15 or 20 at a time. So I think you have to have people sign up. I would say, here's how we're going to run this division for this age group, whatever, this year. See how many sign up. Because you're right, Coach. I mean, every year in Oregon, we have over 100 kids at a particular level. Okay. So we have 3 divisions. We've got National, American, Federal within minors, within juniors, within seniors. So we make sure that we only have 25 or 30 at each tryout. If we have more than 25, maybe 30, we're going to divide those up into 2 sessions of 15 or 20 at the most, or something like that, so that we're really interacting with these kids. We're running it like a practice. That's the format that I really think is the most effective, is let's just see how the kids respond to a normal practice. Just your basic practice format with dynamic movement, stretching and athleticism, then base running, then throwing and receiving progression, then position fundamentals, then hitting fundamentals, and game sim. I mean, that's your basic practice plan. Let's run tryouts that way, and you'll be able to assess the kid from a personal point of view and an athletic point of view and a player point of view. They'll get a chance to respond to your coaching, and you'll get a chance to assess whether your approach with this group is going to work or not, so you can go and get better. So yeah, to answer your question, I like every session not to have more than 20, 25 players. And we got more than that, we need to divide it up into multiple sessions.
Take what Coach SARANCIK is saying and recommending here. If you're thinking or hearing this and, yeah, our league doesn't do this or that, take it to your league and speak up and be an advocate for some change.
Yeah, and one more thing, the more I'm thinking about this, what you said, and you're right, Coach. I did a podcast last week where 2 gentlemen on there, both coaches, longtime coaches, and the one coach said, I don't have a choice. I'm up in the stands, whatever. The more I'm thinking about that, you know what? It should be exactly the opposite. The administrators should be in the stands. They should be evaluating the coaches. Who do we have here chosen? Because who are these coaches most of the time? They're parents. They're really well-meaning, hardworking, dedicated parents, former high school, college, and pro players. That's who's out there, okay? But you and I know that just because you played the game well doesn't mean that you can teach it, okay? So maybe as a league, instead of getting out there running tryouts, you should sit in the stands and say, who are these coaches that have volunteered to be coaches of these players? And what skills are they bringing to the table? You should listen to them coach. You should watch them coach. Because you know what you're going to find out? They need a lot of training. because I don't think leagues give their coaches enough training. That's number one. They really don't help these coaches learn how to teach this level, because they may be teaching their or coaching their son's team, which is, a developmental team. They may be really good at working with elite players of advanced skill, but they're not very good at being patient with and breaking it down at a basic learning level, keeping it fun, things like that. You don't want to get rid of them. We're very, very grateful and appreciative that they're out there volunteering their time, but you may want to help them. And secondly, you're going to find that any pool of coaches, let's say we have 30 coaches in any particular division or whatever, you're going to have some that know how to coach and understand infield play very well. You got others that understand outfield play really well. And you may have a few that understand not just how to pitch, but how to teach pitching. All right. Same with catching. You may have a few that caught, but you may only have one or two that really understand how to teach catching. And yet that's not how we organize our coaches. We put parents of players at certain levels as the coaches. They may not have a clue on how to teach pitching or catching. Maybe what we ought to do is, instead of having all the players on a team attend a team practice 3-4 times a week, maybe once or twice a week, they should go take pitching lessons from the coaches that understand how to teach pitching, or catching lessons with coaches that understand how to coach catching. Have mini clinics so that the kids are actually learning from coaches who understand how to teach those things. Because you're asking these coaches to be a jack of all trades. So what are they going to default to? They're going to default to two things. Number one, teaching them how to play the game. Well, these kids are smart. They don't need a lot of time to figure out how to play the game. Number two, you're going to force the kids who want to get better from a developmental point of view either to leave your league altogether or to go get private coaching. And yet we shouldn't be limiting development to those who can afford extra outside coaching. You shouldn't have a monetary requirement to get better. But that's what happens. You're not being developed within these leagues because you're asking coaches to coach that don't know how to teach certain skills to really develop these players. So they're going to go and hire private coaches. And if they can't afford to hire these private coaches at $50, $75, $100 an hour, then they're going to leave the league and go someplace else, or they're going to get out of baseball altogether and go take up another sport where it's done better and differently. So these are things that I think are just mistakes that are continuing to be made over and over and over.
So for those league presidents and board members listening that have a lot of influence in your league, during tryouts, watch the coaches coach to see what they're maybe specialists in. Are they a specialist with pitchers or hitters or catchers, and see what they might specialize in? Before that, I would send out a form to all coaches and say, hey, is there something you feel very confident coaching? Is there an area you feel very confident coaching? And then compile a list. And I think Coach SARANCIK's idea here is fantastic. Then you can say, hey, would you be open one Saturday a month, hosting an hour session here, maybe a couple hours, and you bring your different levels in and you work with pitchers, or however you set it up. Time is finite. And I know already being a coach takes up so much time. It's one thing if you're a high school coach, it's kind of tied into your teaching job and they say you got to do this. And then there's state titles and all this stuff in the newspaper, or college coaches who are getting paid a ton of money these days at the higher levels. And to summarize, I think if you're listening right now, if you have a lot of influence in your league, look to identify specialists and are capable of teaching and coaching a specific thing. Not that they play. By the way, some of the best coaches, actually the best coaches over all these years of coaching youth baseball, which is very different than high school, and it's so much different than college and pro. Youth baseball, the best coaches I've ever come across never played baseball in their life, but specialists set that up through the league. Use tryouts to identify coaching weaknesses and go up to those coaches, say, hey, I saw this or I saw that. And I like your idea of using a practice format for tryouts. All right, that wraps up part one of our interview. Part two coming to you next week. We'll talk about how to plan for successful tryouts, how to run the tryouts, a great way to evaluate players during tryouts, some other things to assess during tryouts that are very important, making sure the kids are a good fit for our teams, and what to prioritize at tryouts to get the most out of our precious time while we're out there at tryouts. So that'll come next week in part two. Also, as we move forward with the podcast, I am pumped up. I have so many topics and tips, strategies to share out with all of you. My list just keeps growing faster than we can have these podcasts. My list right now is easily over 25 things we have not talked about on this podcast, new tips, new strategies, iterations, and optimized strategies of things from years ago that we talked about on this, the longest running weekly youth baseball podcast out there. All right, everybody, Let's keep taking care of our health so we can be at our best for our families, our close friends, our players. And let's take this information out there and let's put it into action. Let's put it into play. You should be super proud of yourself for being a coach. It's easily, like I've said many times before, it's easily one of the best things, the easiest and top things to be able to hang our hat on at the end of our lives, looking back, being a coach and taking the time to be a great coach in this small window of time that we have with our kids in the youth sports world. You'll never regret it. And sometimes I think that's what parenting is all about, trying to minimize regrets and using that as motivation to be kick butt parents. All right, everyone, y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.